Hey everyone, and welcome. So today we're going to tackle one of those tricky little grammar rules. You know, the kind that can trip up just about anyone? Yeah, we're diving into countable versus uncountable nouns.
And it really all kicks off with a simple question like this one. Why is it that we can say two songs and it sounds totally normal, but two musics just sounds wrong? You feel it, right? But what's the actual logic behind it? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
And here's the best part. The answer is actually pretty simple. It all boils down to two basic types of nouns. And I promise, once you get this, it's one of those things you'll never be able to unsee.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with a counting conundrum, meet the two noun types, explore the worlds of both countables and uncountables, pit them against each other in a showdown, and then you'll walk away with a new grammar superpower. Sound good? Let's do it.
Okay, first things first. Let's get right to the core idea that makes this whole thing make sense.
So at its heart, it's really this simple. On one side, you've got countable nouns. These are the easy ones, things you can actually count. You know, one banana, two bananas. Makes perfect sense. But then, on the other side, you've got uncountable nouns. Think of these more as stuff, substances, ideas, liquids, like rice or water. You wouldn't say one rice, two rices, right? Because you're thinking of it as a whole pile, not as individual grains.
All right, let's zoom in on that first group. Time to explore the world of countables.
So the key thing about a countable noun is that it can change its form. It has a single mode, a singular form, like a banana, and a multiple mode, a plural form, like bananas. It's all about being able to talk about one of something or more than one.
Okay, so there are a few rules of the road for these guys. First, you can make them plural by adding an S. Song becomes songs. Easy. You can also just use that plural form all by itself, like I like bananas. Totally fine. But here's the big one, the one that catches people. You cannot use the singular form alone. You can't just say, I want banana. It needs a little helper word, like a or the.
All right, we've got the countables down. Now let's venture into the other realm, the sometimes tricky universe of uncountables.
Uncountable nouns, they kind of play by their own rules. They're stubborn. They only have one form, period. So forget about saying races or musics. It's just not a thing. These words describe things that we see as a complete package, a whole mass. Think about liquids, or sand, or even ideas like luck.
And it's not just physical stuff you can touch. Yeah, we've got sand and water, but what about abstract concepts? Things like music, advice, or luck. Money is the perfect example. We can count dollars, we can count coins, but we don't count the concept of money itself. Nobody says, I have 3 monies in my pocket. It just doesn't work that way.
So this raises a really practical question, right? If you can't say a music or 2 rices, then how in the world do you talk about just one of them? How do you measure this stuff?
Well, there's a really clever workaround. It's called a unit phrase. Basically, you just borrow a countable noun to do the counting for you. You don't count the music, you count the pieces of music. You don't count the rice, you count the bowls of rice. See? It's like a little grammar hack that lets you measure the unmeasurable. All right, it's time for the main event. Let's put these two types of nouns in the ring, side by side, for the ultimate showdown. This is where it all comes together.
This table right here, this is your new best friend. Seriously, look at the key differences. Can it be plural? For countables? Yes. For uncountables? Nope. Can you use a or an? Only with a singular countable noun. And this last part is huge. The words we use to describe amounts. With countables, we use many and few, like many friends, few problems. But with uncountables, we use much and little, like much traffic, little information. Getting this right is a total game changer.
So, we've gone through all the rules, the charts, the examples, but what's the big deal? Why does any of this actually matter? Well, because this isn't just about passing a grammar test. This is about unlocking a communication superpower.
Look, at the end of the day, knowing the difference helps you pick the perfect word every time. It means your communication becomes clearer, more precise. It's the difference between sounding like you're just learning English and sounding like you've really mastered it. It's all about that natural flow.
Okay, so now you've got the basics on lock. But just to keep you on your toes, did you know that some nouns are chameleons? They can be both countable and uncountable depending on how you use them. For example, think about the word hair or light. But hey, that's a deep dive for another day. For now, keep an ear out for these nouns in the wild.